Dana's working with them. Um, Dana's working with them. We've got a quorum, so we're going to go ahead and start, and he can just join us in a little bit here. Alyssa, are you there?
I am, Mayor.
Yeah, let's go ahead and go live.
All right, we are live.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. I call to order the Astoria City Council workshop meeting for Monday, November 9th at 2020 at 5 p.m. Council member Boat's having a little bit of technical issues. They're working on it. He'll join us shortly, but we wanted to go ahead and get going on the workshop. We have two items tonight. 2.1 budget discussion, a proposed 2021-2025 capital improvement plan. That will be done by Trish. And then the second item on the workshop is 2.2 Arboretum area transportation plan update. Since Dana is off to the side, Trish, are you there and ready to go?
I am, Mayor. Thank you.
Yep, the floor is yours. Please begin.
All right. Good evening, Mayor and Council. This evening, we are going to talk about the proposed 2021 through 25 capital improvement plan. It's a 5-year plan that identifies proposed capital projects. And I am going to share my screen. Can everybody, let's see, I gotta hit one more button, I think. Share. There it is. Can everybody see this screen?
Perfect.
Yes. All right, great. So the adoption does not mean that it's automatically approved. Any projects over 20,000 would still go to council for approval. The projects are all included in line item budgets, and they are adopted conceptually. There is adequate funding for all the projects in the long-term financial plan. So the first fund we're going to look at is the general fund. We don't have anything in there for 2021. We were expecting to replace the 2011 Ford Escape, but we pushed that out another year. So those are normally a 10-year replacement though. And the next fund is our IT, which is our newest capital fund. With the increasing costs of technology, we're beginning to plan for future replacements and upgrades. So there are not any replacements or new equipment planned for 2021. That's due to the more recent upgrades that we did at the end of 2019, early 2020. And then also with the new computer and monitor replacements that we recently purchased. So this fund is supported by a transfer from the general fund. Are there any questions about any of these projects specifically? I know I did put detail in the packet on all projects, so if you have any specific questions, we can pull those up and take a look at them as well.
Council, instead of waiting for me, just go ahead. If you've got a question when Tricia asks, just go ahead and let's try not to walk on each other, but just go ahead and ask your question.
This is Deb. I have a question.
Yep. Yeah.
Can you tell me, I know that a lot of this IT equipment was taken care of by the CARES Act funding that we received.
Right.
What's the savings to the general fund budget or this information technology budget because of that money?
So the spend on the laptops and monitors was, let me just pull it up real quick. I have that information. So we did have I know Dana probably knows this right off the top of her head, but
So Mayor and Council, while Tricia is looking for the actual number, the order of magnitude is about, I believe we were about $64,000.
I wanted to say it was 50 something, but yeah, it's close to that.
And that would have been over we accelerated replacements for 2021 and 2022. So that savings would have been spread over those 2 years.
So it was $69,680.
So it's safe to assume that those savings are reflected in the following year budgets.
Well, that's correct. So we would have had quite a few replacements in 21, but that we did not need to do, which is why we don't have anything scheduled. And then we'll be looking at monitors and replacements, every 4 years or so, as we may add staff or there may be other needs. We might need to use some of those funds to pay for that. So we have 10,000 per year in there, but we'll look at that annually. It doesn't necessarily mean that we're going to spend 10,000 per year on computer and monitor replacement, but it's kind of a starting point for us.
Trish?
Yep.
I was under the impression that the expenditures for the CARES Act were things going to budget in the first place. This would be over and above what we normally would budget. So basically, these computers, in theory, well, in practice, would be equipment that we wouldn't have purchased without the need to under the CARES Act. So am I missing something?
Correct.
So there's Do you want me to answer that, Trish?
Yeah, go ahead, Dan.
Yeah.
Councilmember Vogt, members of the council. Yep, you're absolutely right, Councilmember Vogt. Those numbers, in order for it to be a CARES Act expenditure under all the requirements, the computer replacements should not have been budgeted in the current year budget. So this is the 2020 budget. All of our replacements were not, all of the purchases that we made in replacing those computers were not in the 2020 budget.
Okay.
And so
you could take from the future. So
you could accelerate, or it just could not be in the current year budget.
I see. Thank you.
Okay, Trish, keep going.
Okay, so the next fund is the Public Works Equipment Fund. 2021 includes replacing the 1998 loader with plow, and also the 2011 pickup and 2011 mower. The cold storage building is in there for 2022, depending on where council goes with the old public works site parking. And then this fund is also supported from a transfer from the general fund. Our next fund is the Fire Department Capital Fund. We don't have any purchases planned in 21. In this fund, 22 includes the replacement of the truck number 11, engine 12. That would be a leased purchase. This fund is also supported by a general fund transfer. And the Parks Fund, we have the tennis court replacement at Lions Park scheduled for 21. And then a picnic ball field shelter in 22. this park is funded by revenues received by developers in lieu of land. So it kind of depends on what revenues we receive for that. But we also started last year doing a transfer from the general fund for $100,000. So this is kind of one of those funds that when we get enough funds, like the trail fund, when we have the funds, then we would consider the project.
Trish, this is Judy. I have a question on these parks in the park fund. A lot of them have gotten pushed out to 2023 and 2024, 2025. Have these been pushed out previously?
They get reviewed every year. Anne goes through and she will put them in the years that she feels it best fits. I mean, it's not necessarily a funding issue, but it's just where she thinks that as far as timing of the parks would be. So that's a question I can go back and ask her if there's a specific park that you wondering.
Well, I was kind of wondering about the Lakeside Estates Park, Phase 2.
Okay.
That was the ballpark. And one of the residents was asking about it possibly being a tennis court, but I see it's not even on radar until 2023. So I was kind of wondering, I thought it was programmed in sooner than that in a previous CIP.
I'd have to go back and look. I don't recall if that one was scheduled earlier. It's possible, but I can go back and look and let you know about that.
And the Bayfront Park improvements, that's in 2025, and I thought that was sooner as well.
Yeah, that one I know definitely was, but she did push that one out as well.
Okay, I'd like to know why these are being pushed out.
Yep, I'll find out and I'll let you know.
Okay, that was it.
Okay, then we go on to Trail Gap. 2021 includes the Greencrest sidewalk, and staff has determined that the fund balance in the trail fund could pay for Greencrest sidewalk with the split of the Bavaria East Trail into the 2 years. That way we would not need to impact the levy in order to do the Greencrest.
Your screen doesn't reflect.
We lost you. Where did he go?
Trish, keep going. If when
Okay.
connected, we can circle back.
Okay. So one of the questions that I had this evening was whether or not council was comfortable with using the fund balance from the Trail Gap Fund to pay for Greencrest sidewalk and then reducing that max tax levy accordingly. Does anybody have any thoughts or preferences on that?
Give that a thumbs up.
Yes, my understanding is that we got $150,000 grant, and that would apply to that.
Well, we won't get the grant until 22, but yes, that is part of this fund balance. This is not showing. This is showing the cost of the project. It's not showing the revenues.
Okay.
That we receive, but the overall fund balance in the Trail Gap Fund does reflect the revenues received from the transfers from the general fund along with the grant.
Okay.
Okay.
And I do have a question on that next one, County Road 43, County Road 11 to Watermark.
Mm-hmm.
Are you talking about which side of the street? Do you know?
I don't know. I would have to get that detail from Anne, but this $75,000 is just for the feasibility study. So the actual project would not. We're trying to do the feasibility studies 2 years prior to the project.
Okay, so it's $75,000 to do a feasibility study?
So Kara might be able to chime in on this one. She knows a little bit more about those projects than I do.
Hi, Kara.
Hi there, Councilmember Black. The specific trail this is referencing would be on the north side of the road from County Road 11 to Watermark. So
Okay.
we have a gap
I know where it
there.
stops. Yeah.
And the 75,000 is intended to represent preliminary design work, because what we learned through the Bavaria process is that the estimates for trails can vary wildly.
Mm-hmm.
So we want to spend some engineering money 2 years in advance so we can really understand what the costs and feasibility are of these projects before we pursue grant applications and work them into the budget.
Okay, when I saw the 75,000 after seeing how much it costs to do Bavaria, I'm like, wait, what is this?
It'd be great.
Yeah, it would be great, but I'm like, I live over that way. I know what you're going to have to go through, and I don't think it's going to cost 75,000.
That's for sure.
Okay.
So Trish, you were asking if the council agrees for 2021 and 2022, splitting the cost across the 2 years. And if the council agrees with that, because you don't have to increase the levy if we do that. Is that correct?
That's correct. Yeah. In order to do Greencrest sidewalk, we would be able to complete that and then also get started on the Bavaria Trail without having to increase the levy. And we could use existing fund balance in order to do that. And then we would receive the grant in 22 and finish up that trail in that year. I mean, chances are it's not going to be a 50-50 split right down the middle, but that's what we're projecting approximately for how that project to go.
So let me get you the answer to the question. I think I heard Councilmember Gregory say yes, he agrees with that. Deb, yes or no?
Yes, I agree with that. My question though is, we're going to be reducing the levy by 110,000, the max tax. Is that correct, Trish?
Right, that's correct. I mean,
Yes.
it would be reduced, that transfer would be reduced by that amount. And then I would present on the 14th the new tax rate and proposed levy increase. So that would be part of that change. There obviously will be, a few other changes that we've found along the way, but that would be one of them. That would be the big one.
Yep,
Yes.
agreeable to that.
So Judy?
Yes.
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 Vote, I see you're back. I don't know if you heard the question. I agree. So there's 4 of us already. It's enough. But the question is for 2021 and 2022. Did you hear that, or do you need us to repeat it?
What is the question? Whether I agree that we fund the Greencrest sidewalk out of this fund and then increase the levy? That's the question.
Trish, you want to, since Councilmember Vogt just got connected again, would you pose the question for him?
Yeah, sure, of course. Councilmember Vogt, the question was, would you be comfortable with using existing fund balance to pay for the Greencrest sidewalk? And we would do Bavaria Trail in 2 years with that revenue from the grant coming in that second year, instead of increasing the levy to do the sidewalk. We would be able to reduce the max tax levy by reducing that transfer to that fund.
Well, it's fait accompli because you've already got 4 people, but I'd like to say, isn't it possible that you're going to find some other budget problems that might reduce that $110,000 levy reduction, so that the net reduction might not be exactly 110,000? Is that true?
That's true. And so I have done some preliminary changes to the budget. I'm actually 116,000 under the max tax levy. So we actually did make some other changes, such as we reduced the COLA to employees from 2.5% down to 2%. And then there was some adjustment to benefits that increased the overall numbers a little bit because we had some, and there could still be because we're going to have open enrollment starts the end of this week. So depending on who takes family or single coverage or what have you, that can make a pretty big impact because family coverage can be up to $25,000 cost on the budget. So there was a few things, and we also did increase revenue from 111 to 120 homes.
So on a net basis, are you able to reduce the levy by 110, less than 110, or more than 110?
I can right now we're reducing it by 116,000.
Okay. Well, then it's easy. We should do it.
Yep.
Okay, thanks. Trish, go ahead.
Okay. Thank you for your feedback on that. The next slide shows the downtown redevelopment, the TIF District 3 that we were proposing using the TIF pooling money to do those parking improvements at the old Public Works site. So that's that project. We don't have a solid number on what it's going to cost exactly, but that's where that, if you were to move forward with doing the parking improvements, then that's when we would consider that cold storage for the for out of that Public Works Capital Fund for 22, because they would need something to replace that building. So
Yes.
Trish, do you know how much is in that TIF cap pool?
the what? I'm sorry, I didn't catch that.
The District 3 TIF pool. How many?
It's right around 500,000.
Okay.
So the fund hasn't been officially closed out yet till after the end of this year. And so we still need to receive our final tax payments in December. And then we had sent back that excess TIF money a couple weeks ago. So once everything gets kind of tied out, we'll have a more definite number on that pooling. But that's my projection, is right around 500,000.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm. And then the next fund is future capital facilities. We put them in 2025 with an expansion of the Public Works facility, and then also the build out of a fire station. These projects would likely rely on bonding. There may be a portion of the fire station that could be done with some funds, but at this point, with it that far out, we're just anticipating bonding for them.
Trish, I have a question on the build out of fire station. Is that the current fire station or the potential new fire station?
That is the current fire station. And that's something that they'll be going through, and Dana might want to update too with the space needs study and the decontamination room area that's needed. So there's a few things.
All right.
Mayor, members of council, I just want to quickly jump in here on that. So these numbers could change on both the expansion of the Public Works facility and the build out of the fire station, our current fire station, as Tricia noted. These are deficiencies that we found as a result of our space needs assessment. And when we built the buildings, they were both built with the intention to be expanded when that time would come. And so our space needs assessment is helping us make those determinations on where those thresholds might be. Because of the CARES Act funds and the timelines related to expending those funds, we put that space needs study on pause. We were about 75, 80% through that process We'll be picking that up here again at the end of November, and we'll be coming before council probably in early Q1 with some more refined recommendations and timelines and different options for this expansion. But we did want to at least have council have an opportunity to start wrapping your arms around what the order of magnitude could be. And some of these things could be phased a little bit different too. So right now, these are not the numbers, but they probably are pretty close. And it may not happen in 2025. Those are things when we look at what is needed in the near term. So between 0 and 5 years and 5 to 10 years and 10 plus years, trying to make sure that we're not lumping everything in the same couple of years. Those are the things that we're going to be talking to council about in more detail in the coming months when we're back in front of you with that space needs assessment.
Okay.
Okay, the next fund is the streets. So the 2021 bonding projects that we have included here are Steiger Lake Lane West, as well as the street extension to Marsh Lake Road. Those are both development-driven projects, so that would be kind of based on what happens in that area. Both of those areas. The 2022 street improvements would be for Rose, Sunflower, and Commercial. And then the 2024 future street improvements would include 80th Street west of Bavaria, Maple Drive, Cry Avenue, and Rolling Bluff. So those would all be bonding projects with the reconstruction projects would include assessments to the property owners.
I thought once they did the roads, that when they just improved them, that we didn't assess them.
We don't assess for overlays, but we do assess for reconstruction projects. And Kara can add to that.
Okay.
Councilmember Black, I was just going to note that the projects listed here in 2022 and 2024 are projects that have been identified as having roads that do require complete reconstruction. They've been previously unplanned. What Public Works Director Dave Shoger and I have talked about is that in 2021, we want to take a closer look at these streets and consider looking at completing them in 2022 and possibly 2024, though some of the streets listed in 2024 do have some unique circumstances associated with them that might cause us to think differently. But they've been previously in the street improvement plan, so we left them in here, but did shift them out a year into the future and plan to do some work on it in 2021. Those are the two projects that were specifically referenced for special assessments, though I would note that when we would do Steiger Lake Lane West and Steiger Lake Lane East, the remainder of Steiger Lake Lane East, the council has previously assessed for improvements in downtown as well. So that would be something the council would need to consider as part of the processes for those projects.
Okay.
And then in the long-term street maintenance fund, so that fund is supported by transfers from the general fund and also state aid. And the current projects that are continuing into 21 from 2020 include the CASA 11, 18, and 43 intersection improvements, which they actually, Kara had updated me that they may be invoiced late this year, but it could be early 2021. So I did include it in here. The implementation for the Arboretum area transportation plans still being developed. We added some projects for 2025, but the future CIP will need to be reviewed in the coming year. And Kara's going to have additional information on this tonight at the workshop as well. The CASA 11 PED crossing would be the GPA with the county. And we have the upgrade for sidewalks to be ADA compliant. That's still under consideration for council. And then street overlay projects are anticipated to begin in 21. We did not have any projects in 2020.
Trish, if I could just jump in here quick.
Sure.
ADA compliant sidewalks are within downtown. We were going to do those in 2020, but decided to defer them given the pandemic and the need to use outdoor spaces for tables and such. We didn't think it would be a good idea to start ripping up sections of downtown in the midst of all of that. So we'll be revisiting that question for 2021 when we know more about the conditions of the world next summer. And then just to expand on what Trish said, we did put some placeholders in here for 2025 associated with Highway 5 improvements and Rolling Acres Road improvements. For Highway 5, there's 500,000 here, and then there was another 500,000 in the Trail Gap Fund associated with the underpass under Highway 5. Those numbers are really just placeholders. In the rest of the workshop tonight, you're going to see the first glimpses of potential costs for city share. We're still reviewing that information and it's still going to go out to public. So the funding strategy for funding the city's share of the road improvements associated with the Arboretum Area Transportation Plan is something we're going to have to spend some time working on next year. But we've got some time before that first project might be headed our way to figure out how we're going to fund that. So I just wanted to highlight that because you're going to see a disconnect between these numbers and what are presented here soon.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, and then utility funds. The 2021 includes the South area improvements, which is also, again, development driven. And we did kind of discuss that briefly at our last workshop when we talked about utility funds. But we also have carried over the well 5, and we have a generator for well number 4 included in the 21 CIP. In 22, there's a County Road 18 sewer replacement along with some equipment purchases and grinder pump for lift station 8. The oversizing we've just put in there for a placeholder that is all dependent on development. And all items are included in the line item budgets for the enterprise fund.
Trish, a question for you on that pump house and well number 5. Given all of the problems with the test wells, we may end up having to drill a couple of different wells. Does this number reflect the assumption that there's going to be one well? And have you looked or have we looked at the fact that we may be forced to drill multiple wells because of the flow?
Chris, do you want me to hop in there?
Sure.
Mayor, so this cost does reflect just one well. The estimating for wells is very kind of not very firm until we actually start drilling a test well in the actual location of the proposed well and start to see what the water quality is. But yeah, the assumption is that we'll be able to do just one well number 5 for now. But the likelihood would be that we might need to drill additional wells in the future sooner than we would have otherwise previously anticipated, with this well producing less than what we had hoped for. So it'll be a future implication, but that information was worked. We tried to work some of that into the work that was done for the rate study to anticipate some of that. But we're going to continue to refine what that future modeling is given the current conditions.
So thanks. Is it possible, if multiple wells have to be drilled, to use one of the test wells, since we already know what the flow rate is in those test wells, and convert it to a production well?
That's part of what we're looking at as we start to see the Gestock-Vogel property development look like it's moving forward. We're working with our well designer to see what makes the most sense with the information we have today. So more to come.
So we really don't know with any certainty what's going to happen, or if this number is order of magnitude right or more precise than that.
I think we're in the ballpark based on what our well designer has been telling us so far, but you know, we'll learn more as we start to get further in. We do view that well as development driven, so it's one of the projects that we aren't putting a lot of time into if there isn't a development moving forward. But now that we are going to be having a sketch plat come forward again associated with that site, we'll be picking it back up again.
All right, thank you.
Thanks.
Okay, I just had one question. Probably Kara will have to answer this one. I noticed that we are doing a lot of oversizing on our sewer main and our water mains, and then I see that we're reimbursing the developer for the oversizing. Can you explain that to us?
Certainly.
How that happens or why?
So during the design of the development, we take a look at whether the development itself, whether the utilities within the development need to be larger to serve areas outside of the development. And oftentimes they do. So the developer is responsible for the cost of constructing the size water and sewer line that they need to serve their development. The city pays the cost difference between the cost to build, as an example, a 21-inch diameter sanitary sewer instead of an 8-inch diameter sanitary sewer. The city pays the difference between those two costs because the sewer is being sized to serve a broader area. And then we pay for that oversizing with the fees that we collect from developers and builders at the time of both plat and building permit. So that's how those improvements get funded. So they're paid for by development.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
You're welcome.
I have a question on the wells. Further question on wells.
Yes.
All probability, we're going to have to do 2 wells in the south. That's something you said because of the difficulty finding the water. Wouldn't it be prudent to put some money into this rather than nothing? I mean, we can't estimate the cost, but couldn't we put $1 million or something in there at 2022, 23, or 24 that indicates that this encumbrance is coming rather than nothing? I think of the fact that, Trish, don't you take these numbers and project debt so that we have a good debt projection out into the next 10 years? So, I mean, I don't think it's prudent if you think we're going to have another well, and it could be in the range of $750 to $1.5 million that we don't put anything in the plan.
So for our south growth area, we through 2040 had been anticipating 4 wells actually in the south growth area. But we had some success with well number 2.5 producing significantly more water than we anticipated. So that allowed us to push that out. So even though we will need, so our well people aren't thinking we're going to need 8 wells instead of 4 wells. They're thinking, okay, maybe it's 2 extra wells over the whole south growth area. So based on the information I have today, we aren't anticipating needing a well number 6 in the south growth area within the 2025 timeframe. So that's why you're not seeing another number plugged in here before 2025. We did talk about, we do have plugged in here some additional storage. all of those pieces fit together. So as we start to refine the 2021 project and the city's taking a closer look at bonding for that, we'll have additional information by then that we can continue to feed to Trish. But right now, I'm not anticipating that well 6 would need to happen in this 5-year time frame.
Okay.
It would be post the 5 years.
Good, thanks.
Trish, go ahead.
All right. So discussion, questions. Is council comfortable with the capital projects and items identified for 2021? And also, do you wish to add, strike, accelerate, delay, anything that you see in the 5-year plan? I did make a note of Judy's questions about the 2 parks, the timing of those parks. So I will get back to you on that, but if there's anything additional that you want to add.
All right, let me go around the horn with the council. Deb, anything?
No, I'm good. Thank you.
Yep, Judy?
No, I'm good.
Yeah, Tom G?
I'm pretty good. And just one question: we did plug in pedestrian crossings on County Road 11, and that was 2 of them. One at 86th Street, and then one further north by the church. We're still going ahead with a joint powers agreement on both of those?
Councilmember Gregory, I'll hop in here, Trish, if that's okay.
Yeah, yes.
The county has completed some additional count information that has been provided to staff for review, and that's under review right now. So that process is continuing to move forward, and that information will be shared with the council when it's ready. Because you all wanted to understand a little bit more about the conditions at both locations before deciding if you wanted to continue to work with both of them. So.
Okay, very good.
Thank you.
Yeah, and that was Deer Run, at Deer Run. And
Yeah,
Deer Run and then by the church.
Yeah.
Tom G, anything else?
Nope, that's it.
Yep, Tom V?
Nothing. That's good.
I have nothing to add. Thanks, Trish. Trish, is there anything more, or is that all you have?
No, just the next step is I will be presenting the for adoption on December 14th at that council meeting. So other than that, I am I'm through. So I will unshare my screen here.
All right, thanks, Trish. Next up then is Kara with an Arboretum Area Transportation Plan update. Kara, the floor is yours.
The floor is mine for starters, and I'm going to hand it right off. So joining us tonight for this item, we have Angie Bursaw from Bolton and Mink. Lyndon Robgent from Carver County is also here. There may be some other attendees who pop in. They're also doing double duty at the Chanhassen meeting, but I am going to turn it over to Angie.
All right. Can everyone hear me?
Yes.
Yep.
Wonderful. Okay, let me just get this covering up my button. There we go. Lyndon, I think you were going to kind of kick us off here.
Oh, yes. Thanks, Angie. Mayor, Council, it's very, very good to be with you tonight. We wanted to give you an update on some really important work that we've been doing over the last 15 months. I would say with a great partnership with city staff, you all, and the public. It's been an excellent process. With that, though, we want to kind of summarize what we've got, and our next phase is to try to come up with a game plan of how to get these projects accomplished, which are extremely important to the county and the Twin Cities area as a whole. So with that, Angie's going to go through a summary of what we've done, and then focus more on the implementation projects that we're going to do in the Victoria area. So with that, Angie, go ahead.
Great. Thanks, Lyndon. So council members, thanks for having us here tonight. I have probably 20 slides. The first couple are just a handful of overview and kind of reminder of where we were last time we were in front of you. And then we're going to jump right into the heart of the matter tonight, which is the implementation plan overview. So on the screen is just a review of our study area. We're looking at multiple corridors, which are shown in orange on the screen. It really is like 5 different corridor studies in one, but also thinking about how these work together as a network. And many times previously when I've been here, we've talked about the goals of making sure this works for vehicles, is safe for all travelers, it works for pedestrians and bicycles and other modes of transportation. We're considering the environment in this area and minimizing impacts. And then financial responsibility, which really is kind of the heart of the matter tonight of how this lays out for the future. We're here, obviously this is a work session, so we're just trying to kind of set the stage and get your input on the draft implementation plan we have so that we can come back in December, hopefully, and be asking for a city resolution supporting the study findings and the implementation next steps. So just really quickly, you've seen this before, this just outlines the process that we've went through. We've been at this for about 18 months, and I believe we've been in front of you at every phase, and we're at the final phase here where we are looking to wrap up by the end of this year with corridor recommendations for improvements and the implementation plan. I'll touch on the next slide on some of the engagement we've done, and we'll also talk about next steps with some online open house coming soon. I think last time I was here, we talked a lot about public input based on the different concepts we were talking about. This is sort of just a snapshot of everything we've done over the last 18 months. And I think it's just a good reminder of, even with the pandemic and us having to shift to a virtual environment, we've continued with the engagement with different advisory committee meetings, open houses, sub-area meetings, which are basically like neighborhood meetings, allowing those most interested in these corridors to have an opportunity to give us input directly. We've met with a few property owners or groups of property owners about specific issues. And we've had various online processes of getting survey input and different ways of people being able to contribute as we have gone along. And city council updates. So that's it. It's probably, if you added it all up, and I think someone did, like over 1,500 interactions of just different people as we've gone. But tonight, what we want to focus on is the implementation plan. Talk a little bit about what an implementation plan is, and then get into some of the thought process behind how do we break this into smaller projects that can be implemented over time. Obviously, there's a lot of corridors here and a lot of miles of road and a lot of investment. So we know it's going to have to take time, and really thinking through what is that sequencing of projects that makes sense to accomplish this. I think a couple of things I wanted to highlight before we jump into some of the details is that the whole purpose of an implementation plan is to allow all of the jurisdictions that are involved in this study. We have 3 cities, Victoria, Chaska, and Chanhassen. We have Carver County and MnDOT. The Minnesota Landscape Arboretum is definitely a big stakeholder that we have. And we also have watersheds and various environmental resource agencies. It's basically to allow all of these various partners to agree on an order, a logical order of future improvements, so that they can, work together. If with that many people involved, if there isn't a plan, it's hard to even talk about moving forward. What this implementation is not is it is not a specific commitment to any of those agencies that I mentioned to invest at a specific improvement at a specific time. Now it's going to suggest, here's how it would make sense to invest and move through this. But for us to get this perfect over the next 20 years is really unlikely. So it's just to kind of set the stage and allow for that discussion. Couple other things before we get into the details. Transportation projects, and you'll see this soon, they're expensive. And it really does take many different funding sources. It is very rare in our day and age that a project is funded with one pot of money. It usually takes a combination of federal, state, local, different grants, and just creativity to put these projects together. So we've been thinking about that, and that's part of this graphic on the screen here, is how to even start with an implementation plan of this scale, is to really think about not only what gives you the best bang for the buck and when, in terms of moving cars and improving safety and maximizing when you think you need to invest in a maintenance need or such. It really tries to think about all of those things, as well as when is there a grant coming up and what project would fit different categories of grants, and really trying to piece all of those things together into a priority plan. So we can talk more about that when we get into individual projects, but I just wanted to share, some of the considerations that have gone into this already. And then finally, this implementation plan, as I mentioned, it's not necessarily a commitment, but it does help you, like already mentioned in your CIP discussion, helps you inform when you might have something coming up, and you can plan for it and fold that into a CIP or inform those grant opportunities. So I'm going to, the next several slides will have some different breaking up of the corridors into projects by these major timeframes. And I just wanted to kind of orient you here. Short term is really the next 5 years or so. And our goal with that bucket of timeframe was to try to line it up with the CIPs and think about what's already programmed, or for instance, the Highway 5 regional solicitation, award, there's a high likelihood that that could get funded, and that would fit within the short term. So how do we think about that and kind of build around that? Then midterm would be the next 5 years or so, and long term kind of building us out to 2040, which is a total of about a 20-year time frame from start to finish. There's a fourth category called opportunity driven, and that's really more development driven. It could fold into long-term or midterm. It really kind of depends on how things come together. One thing about these timeframes is that the next 5 years seem to be sort of coming together. At least they feel a little bit more real. Beyond 5 years, whether it's midterm or long term, I think is less known. The goal of all of this is to maximize outside funding. And so because of that and the unknowns of, would we get this grant or that grant or this funding source, it's really going to shift projects between the midterm and long term. And so I think what I would suggest is, we're looking for input on, does this make sense the way that we're thinking about it? But just keep in the back of your mind that it's not unheard of for things to move around, and it will, depending on a funding award that might shift some priorities and shake it around a bit. And hopefully then when we talk about outside funding sources, that really should be, it could change city cost shares, or what we call local, with city or county, and hopefully that's decreasing those cost shares. But ultimately, investments for transportation funding like this that are significant, we really try to look at this in 5-year increments so that you can match it up with your planning, like your CIPs and such, and just be able to prepare a bit because, again, of trying to maximize and plan for financial responsibility. So here is a big picture look at all of our corridors. And I would say don't worry too much about the map and all the notes and colors yet. I'm gonna break this up about 10 different ways and walk through this so that you can understand how we've been thinking about it. But at a big picture look at all of the corridors between now and 2040, we have broken this up into about 18 different projects. Total investment, total, so that includes, construction costs, engineering costs, right-of-way costs. It does not include city utility costs, but everything else that I just mentioned is about $204 million. Now, one thing I want to say about that is we have built in inflation into this. So inflation on projects that occur in future years, because inflation has such a big impact on dollars. So if we were to go build all of this, today, it would be about 150 million. So inflation has a big impact, but we have found that if you're not really recognizing that and thinking about that, it can catch you off guard, which is why we've included it in here and noted that. So of that total, the way that cost share and cost share policies work between MnDOT, county, et cetera, it's falling into those three buckets right now of county about 43 million of that 204, trunk highway eligible 129, and then local, which is the three cities, about 26 million. So what I want to do over the next few slides is walk through first kind of a quick reminder of the corridor vision. So, what does Highway 5 include? And then how we're thinking about these in terms of a funding strategy by corridor. And then walk through the sequencing, what we think should come first or second and why, and get your input on all of that. So I'm going to talk first about Highway 5. So just a reminder before we focus too much on colors here, Highway 5, the recommended vision is for expansion to 4 lanes basically from CASA 11 on the western edge all the way over through 41. So a big project. That does include, with the 4-lane expansion, it includes access management, safety improvements, and then of course significant capacity increases with that expansion. You can see on the screen there's a couple things noted here, and I'm not going to go through every detail, but it does include major intersection improvements at 41 and 5, which is called the partial displaced left turn. The Crimson Bay connection is an Arboretum area access management, where the Arboretum entrance today will become an exit only, a right only. And then there's some improvements to the neighborhood in Chanhassen that's shown. It includes a bridge over the Minnewaska Lake area, which is a major expense. That's about a $14 million bridge itself. It includes relocating the Arboretum entrance, the main entrance to Minnewaska Parkway with a signal. It includes improvements at Rolling Acres Road intersection. There's an underpass proposed for trail users west of Rolling Acres Road area, and a signal at Park. It also includes, I'm just going to real quick skim through this because we did go through these last time I was here, but it includes a right in, right out at 78th Street and Steiger Lake Lane, and potential pedestrian grade separation in that area as well. And then the downtown improvements we talked about last time with some local road changes, some signal improvements at CASA 11 in downtown, and then a intersection enhancement at the CASA 11 north intersection, probably a roundabout. We looked at a signal and a roundabout, but the roundabout is most favored. So big investments in terms of just different types of projects, and will take time. There's a large dollar amount, of course, with this project. We are thinking about Highway 5 project in general, and this will be many projects, but trying to maximize the regional solicitation, which is federal dollars that come to the metro area every 2 years, and trying to really kind of just march down the corridor of trying to maximize that funding, again, to help get it funded along the way. So I'm going to I'll probably come back. I'm going to talk about these different timeframes, but how we're thinking about Highway 5 is that we get the regional solicitation project that is in right now, and we're waiting to hear on for 2024 or 2025 dollars, which is this pink area here. That would come first. Along with some other potential projects, which I can come back to and talk through short term, but then fund the bridge, and then generally move west or east to west with Highway 5 improvements. So we'll come back to the timeframes of how this all actually pieces together with all the other corridors. But Victoria's share of what's shown here on Highway 5 at this point is about 4.8 million of the 149 million. I'll break this out by project and show you Victoria's share a little bit further. If you're okay with me moving on, I'll just talk by corridor, and then we'll come back and talk by time frame and individual projects split up.
Okay. Yeah, please proceed.
Okay. So Rolling Acres Road, the big picture look at this, about a $23 million project. We're thinking about splitting this into a couple different projects here, sort of a north and a south, and then looking at the trail underpass as a separate project, with at-grade improvements being part of probably a shorter term fix. But what we're thinking about here is that there seems to be some agreement on a 2-lane divided roadway from Highway 5 through Interlochen, with a roundabout at Interlochen to help facilitate U-turns and such. There's less agreement, and there's more sensitivity around property impacts and driveways and fitting this all in north of Interlochen. So we still have 2 options on the table, which is okay for this type of study. Really what we have for options is either continuing the 2-lane divided from Interlochen up to a proposed roundabout at Highway 7 and Rolling Acres Road, or doing the 3-lane option from Interlochen to Highway 7. So kind of a combination corridor could be an option. This corridor is most likely to be more traditionally funded with county dollars and city dollars, rather than a regional solicitation type corridor, just based on the functional classification and what it's eligible for. There might be some opportunities, especially with the southern half of the corridor, to think about it in terms of, is there a way to package some of that with Highway 5 improvements and benefits from Highway 5? Would that open up other funding opportunities? It certainly could. So those are things that, are still certainly an option. But again, trying to also fold in, we know that MnDOT has a pavement preservation project on Highway 7 in 2026. So there's dollars set aside for that, and how can we maximize and time these things to take advantage of those? So again, total cost for this is about 23 million, and Victoria's share 4.8. Bavaria Road, I won't spend much time here. You're all very familiar with this, and coming soon in 2022. This is really just constructing the trail along the east side of Bavaria Road. A cost of 1.1 million. I know that you do have a DNR grant as well for that, but we just have basically noted that in the plan that's the plan.
Okay.
And then moving on to 82nd Street. So a couple different things are combined here. We have a roundabout proposed at 82nd Street and Bavaria that could be built on its own without needing to do all of the 82nd Street improvement. So that's split out into its own, which is 3.3 million. And then 82nd Street roadway itself. This is a very expensive new roadway. And it is really, it has just some unique characteristics of building a road and flattening and getting the grades and the profiles and curves to work and be safe as a county highway. So about $24 million project, which does include a bridge over the ravine area in Chaska to connect into Lyman and 41. So expensive project that most likely will require outside funding to get it to make it happen, just due to that project cost and the fact that this is considered an other arterial, which doesn't make it eligible for many of the traditional regional solicitation type funding sources. So the options for funding are less. But because it is a unique case, there could be some different fundings that are considered, like what's called a LRIP, or a Local Road Improvement Program earmark, which is essentially legislative bonding for a project like this that could reduce local share costs and make it happen sooner. The triggers for this project would definitely be funding and figuring out, how does that happen? Another trigger could be if the Arboretum area, Arboretum develops their master plan, which included a Chinese garden with a new access off of the 82nd Street. That could be another trigger that actually could, increase its attractiveness for bonding of the type that I mentioned, the LRIP. The final trigger would be when Chaska develops. They have a large stake in this, and I think we've mentioned before, their 2040 comprehensive plan doesn't even have development along the south side of 82nd Street within the next 20 years. So it's not a priority for them to, I think their share is $6 million to make that happen. So it will take sort of this combination of, what other funding sources can we put together, and how would that move things? And as I mentioned before, of the shifting between midterm, long-term, this is probably a great example of something that if a funding source is identified and happens, that can shift and other things kind of fall depending on how that goes together. The 41 project in pink, I'm not going to talk about. That's there's a signal improvement on 41 at 82nd Street. Otherwise, that is Chaska and Chanhassen. Mm-hmm. So I have 3 slides that are really the same information that I just showed you by corridor, but now we're going to look at it by time frame. So what does this mean for short term? And you can get a sense here then of how we're thinking about this in terms of sequencing. So everything in pink shown on the screen that's highlighted is that short term. So the next between now 2021 and 2026. And again, just an implementation plan, not a commitment at this time. But it's really building off of that Highway 5 regional solicitation, what we're assuming to be an award. Of getting that funding for Highway 5, which is basically this area in pink on Highway 5. We know your Bavaria Trail project is happening, so that's shown here. And this is also including perhaps the south part of Rolling Acres Road. As I mentioned, there could be an opportunity to seek other funding sources to help with moving this project forward sooner, because it does also have a benefit and kind of tie in with that Highway 5 project. We also have included some lower cost improvements that would have a high benefit in terms of operations and safety improvements to not only the intersections itself, but the network. So thinking about the CASA 11 roundabout that I mentioned, and then some signal improvements and lane striping in downtown at the 11 and Highway 5 intersection.
Angie, are you saying that we did talk about changing the way the lanes worked right there at 11 and 5 so that they could go straight and right and then just have a left lane?
Correct.
Is that something we could do right away?
Yep, we're showing that as that would be a big benefit. We put it in our short term. So, the sooner the better from an operations and safety standpoint. And that has a Victoria share cost of about $80,000 because it's not only striping, but it does include some signal improvements itself. So this isn't the total cost. We're just trying to, share what the Victoria cost would be. So
Okay.
a different way of looking at this in whole then is all of the things shown in that peach or pink color on the screen add up to a total cost of about 40 million. If it were all to happen like this, the Victoria share is about 4.9 million.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
For roughly 4 or 5 years here, in rough numbers, that's basically 25 to 30% of all of our revenue that we get from property taxes. That's an awfully heavy lift for the taxpayers of Victoria, especially since this is going to benefit far more than just Victoria, all of the communities west of us. And that I just think that this is placing an extremely hard burden on Victoria taxpayers for asking for that kind of a share. I think that's something that's going to have to be looked at.
Yeah, that's kind of like assessments.
No, I understand that and I don't think anybody would argue that we want to contribute and we need to contribute, but 25 to 30% of our of all real estate taxes that we get would have to go into this. That's an awful heavy lift. That means a lot of other things aren't going to get done.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I'm very sympathetic to, some of these dollar amounts are big. One thing, and that's kind of why we're here, is to see if they're, just to kind of do a reality check on the how real is this and do things need to shift? Not again that there's a commitment that this has to happen exactly this way. And as I mentioned, the goal is to try to seek outside funding and reduce these local share amounts, and county and city included. So there's a lot of ifs and what ifs into this, but if in an ideal world, if these things could be packaged together, it makes the most sense. But we also want it to be realistic. And if there are things that need to shift, we want to know that and know that now so we can all plan accordingly.
Yeah, and if I could add Angie Linden here. If you look at the screen, Mayor, 1.1 million is for the trail you guys are doing soon. And then I think Kara estimated 500,000 was your share of the ped underpass on 5. So 1.6 million of this 4.9 number is for 2 trail connections.
Yes.
And the benefit is we're getting a 4-lane highway on Highway 5. That's an incredible improvement to the community. Yes,
I don't think anybody would argue about the improvements are needed, but you said it yourself. These kind of connections are not just for the benefit of Victoria, and if Victoria shouldering a large chunk of this, at least in terms of a small city. I mean, it's the county that passed the transportation tax. I would look to the county to pick up a heavier share of that, because one of the reasons you pass that tax is to do infrastructure in Carver County. I'd also argue that this is not just for the benefit of Victoria. Every community west of us, right? There's only 2 main east-west corridors in the north side of the county. 7 and 5. And so everybody that's west of us on 5 is going to benefit from this. And so if we're the only ones shouldering that burden, it just makes me wonder whether or not the county ought to pick up more from that transportation tax that you guys passed. So I know this is preliminary. You're asking for thoughts and feedback. That's my reaction to the numbers that I'm seeing here, especially given the percentages of Victoria's budget that's being projected as far as our share of the costs.
Yeah, that's a point well taken. Just to follow up too, Angie mentioned this, other than the Highway 5 grant that we're assuming will happen, that's a $10 million grant. This doesn't include any other grant funding for that roundabout at Dairy Queen there, or anything on Rolling Acres Road. So we're hopeful that the local costs will come down. As far as the sales tax goes, when the board did implement that, we were very careful to put a minimum burden on the city. So basically we act like MnDOT, except we actually give a little bit of a break to the cities as well. So the majority of the costs on Highway 5, vast majority, are going to get picked up by the county sales tax. So, I mean, the only things the cities pay for are part of the trail connections and then any aesthetics. We pick up local signal legs, local legs of roundabouts that are connected to a trunk highway. So the overall impact to the city, we knew that would be a big issue because these projects are huge, and when they come through a community, they are a budget buster. So we try to recognize that and make sure that our cost policy for the sales tax projects on state roads was as small as possible for the cities.
All right, thanks. Are you getting much response from the state since 5 is obviously a state highway? Can they pick up a bigger share? I mean, is this all set in stone? Any idea?
Angie showed that the cost share, it says trunk highway eligible. That doesn't mean the state's got any money, to be honest. You mentioned Highway 5 and 212, and then there's 7. There's a different hierarchy in the way MnDOT invests in these significant projects. And because Highway 5, for whatever reason, it's a tier below 212 in the functional class. This is what they call an A minor arterial, whereas 212 is a principal arterial, which is a higher class. They hold a higher priority in investing in those because they simply don't have the money. So 5 does not have a lot of construction dollars coming from MnDOT. So we have to rely on the federal grant process. They do have some grants of their own that they give out, the local partnership program. We can go after the state legislative LRIP bonding. There's some TED funds, which is another bonding program through DEED and MnDOT. There's a freight program. There's a handful of small grants you can get, but as far as the state trunk highway budget, they would invest in preservation, or if there's a need to resurface something, or if there's a safety problem they want to fix, they would certainly help with that. But to expand the highway, they don't have that in their budget. So that's one of the reasons, or the major reason actually, that the county decided that the sales tax was really our only option to try to bridge that gap.
All right, so we're running short on time, and I don't want to sidetrack us, but last time I heard from the state, Highway 5 wasn't even in their 20 or 25-year plan. Has that changed?
No, it hasn't changed. For expansion, it hasn't. They'll have preservation projects in there, but not for expansion. You are correct.
So is this the only way this gets done is if the county and the local the cities pay for it? What you're saying is the state's not going to pay for it? Lyndon, did I lose you?
I think he was agreeing, but we might have lost him.
All right. Well, let's Angie, go ahead and keep going.
Just a quick comment, please. This is very expensive, and we've always talked about the fact that it's so expensive, and when will it ever happen? But if Victoria is going to expand to the west, past Lake Bridge, and there's some very fertile territory over there for nice development, we're going to have to get Highway 5 fixed, because Highway 5 is the #1 barrier to anyone building a house out in that direction. Secondly, this kind of development on Highway 5 will just help the overall vitality of Victoria in many different ways, not only the downtown, but it'll make Victoria accessible in and out in many directions. So there's some, we're going to get a lot of benefit when this happens. And if our price is $4 to $5 million, you can bond that over 20 or 30 years, and it won't be a major encumbrance on the tax. But we're going to get, if this would ever happen, God knows when, this will really help the city of Victoria in many ways. This is not something that a bunch of transients are getting all the benefit of. We're going to get a lot of benefit. All I got to say.
Okay, I'll move on, if that's okay, I just have 2 more slides here. So this was short term. The midterm timeframe, how we're thinking about this is, this assumes, again, that the short term is completed. And if we're talking about Highway 5, we would move then to the bridge itself and get that expanded and built to 4 lanes. So basically 4 lanes from just west of the 41 intersection, through the Park Cochia area. And then look at the northern half of Rolling Acres Road. And we put into the midterm timeframe just this together, the roundabout and the 82nd Street. Again, assuming that would require a major outside funding source, but recognizing there is a lot of value to the network of having this improvement. So again, putting that into the midterm. So total costs for midterm are about 88 million. Victoria's share, again, you can see the breakouts down below, but about 3.8 million. And then finally, long-term. So again, on Highway 5, I mentioned kind of moving east to west. So we would have the downtown section left to build from Park Cochia area all the way through the 11 intersection. But then also the 41 Highway 5 intersection itself. That might seem a little backwards, just of why would you wait to have that be the problem? But what we found from our technical analysis is that if we can fix some of the biggest bottlenecks first, like the Rolling Acres Road and through the bridge area, really this 41 Highway 5 intersection itself is going to work a lot better if we can move east to west and then come back and do this. And also that's a funding strategy of, saving this intersection itself for when we can leverage the most competitive funds with how the rest of this is packaged. The trail underpass itself is included in here as a long-term, but remember we had at-grade improvements in the short term for that trail crossing on Rolling Acres Road. So that was really the packaging of these. And again, we just wanted to share the thinking at this point so that the city could have time to kind of mull it over and have more conversations before we'd be looking for a nod for city support of the general plan. Again, recognizing the numbers are going to change, but trying to share order of magnitude and sequencing thinking. We have an open house planned coming up. We actually have a stakeholder meeting tomorrow night, and then we have an open house meeting on November 19th. It's a live virtual event where we will give a presentation, but then let it be open online for a few weeks afterwards until December 4th, where people can provide input on the final corridor recommendations and the draft implementation plan. And again, I mentioned we'd be back looking for council support of the recommendations and findings here in December. And then financial coordination with cities would be ongoing from 2021 on as these things come together.
Okay.
All right, thanks. Kara, any final words?
Nothing from me. We'll share on social media the post that came out from the county, and we'll use our platform to get the word out about the next open house, and hopefully can get some folks to participate either in the live virtual event or the online opportunity to engage over the couple weeks.
All right, thank you. Council, any final quick questions? We only have a few minutes here, but anybody have any questions real quick before we let everybody go?
I'm good.
Deb?
No, I'm fine. This is great work, and we need to be starting to think about how we're going to put the money together to get this accomplished.
Tom G?
Thank you.
Yep. Tom G? Tom, you're muted.
Did you say Tom V?
No, Tom Gregory, he was muted.
Sorry, am I good there?
Yep, you're good.
Okay, yeah, no, I agree that this is a crucial corridor, and if the county gets some funding to move forward, we need to follow suit and join in and somehow make it happen.
Yep, thanks. Tom V?
This is good. This is a good plan, and one day at a time.
Yeah,
we'll see.
Yep. I gotta admit, it is, and it's going to definitely benefit Victoria, but there's a lot of other people that are going to benefit. I'm just disappointed that as much we pay MnDOT that this isn't even in their 20-year plan. It apparently isn't important to them, but this affects a good chunk of Carver County, and I would think it would have been higher up in their planning process. But be that as it may, this is going to be a heavy lift for Victoria. And to your point, yeah, we can bond for it, but it's just if you look at the estimated costs over what was that, 15 years, 4 or 5 million per every 5 million, or 4 or 5 million for Victoria in every 5 years is a $15 million lift. Right now, again, this is all preliminary. That just seems like a very heavy burden for the Victoria taxpayers for many years. So we'll see whether or not that actually is the final numbers, but I'm just concerned about how much we're going to be expected to pay out of that. So I appreciate Angie, you and Lyndon coming in and sharing that. Good update. It'll be interesting to see where this plays out. So council, if there's nothing else, let's go ahead and wrap up the workshop. And for the public, we're going to take probably let's start the council meeting at 6:35 so everybody can take a quick a break, get a glass of water, as the case may be. And then we'll pick up and start the council meeting at 6:35. With that, council, can I get a motion to adjourn the workshop?
So moved.
Who was that, please?
Deb, so moved.
Deb? Yeah, thank you. Can I get a second, please?
A motion.
Second by Tom Vogt. No further discussion. Let's get a roll call vote. Deb?
Aye.
Judy?
Aye.
Tom G?
Aye.
Tom V?
Aye.
I vote aye. We're adjourned. We'll convene the council meeting at 6:35. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.